Okay, another office hours video today, and today's topic is about something you probably haven't given a ton of thought to, and many people aren't really connecting the dots on this one. So I thought maybe I'd do what I do, which is pattern match, and connect a few dots together for you to help you really improve on how you're performing in your interviewing. You'll hear some of the better recruiters and headhunters and folks on YouTube talk about developing your stories that you want to share in your interviews. And they use the word stories as kind of a catch-all bucket for talking about the experiences on your resume. And that makes sense, right? Those are the stories that you want to tell. But there's kind of an unsaid thread here that I really want to touch on to really drive home the importance of storytelling as a topic, right? When you think about just humans, we've existed for a long time. I don't want to get into a philosophical discussion or scientific discussion. We've been around for a long time. But from the time that we could verbalize speech and talk and sit around a campfire, we have been using stories to communicate what we value, who we are, what happened over there, right? Why Joe got eaten by the big thing that had scales and teeth because we didn't know what the word dinosaur was. And actually this is total side tangent. Someone pointed out to me that like George Washington grew up in a world and died in a world in which dinosaurs were not known to exist, which that kind of blew my mind, but there you go. There's fun fact. So we've evolved as humans, which stories are the core of who we are, what we are, how we communicate, how we share the experience of being human, right? And so when we then transitioned to the written word, we understood how we wanted to process stories, right? There's a certain cadence to it, and there's a flow to how stories work. Joseph Campbell has a great analysis of the hero's journey. Not what I'm going to get into here. Maybe I'll do a longer video on that later if you'd like me to connect the hero's journey to how you can interview better. I've spent time on that. Leave it in comments or other things you want to know about. That is one thing I do ask. If you find this content useful, please like the video, subscribe. But definitely if you have questions you want to ask for office hours to hear what an ex-Amazon, ex-Microsoft, ex-bunch of tech companies, now semi-retired guy would how I would answer questions that you would have about how to be successful in the workplace, go right ahead. But also entrepreneurial questions, I guess, because that's what I do with my real day job. But so stories are the core of who we are. And if you don't believe me, right, if I ask you the most popular book ever written, ever sold, most people, because I asked this question in the follow-up sessions when I'm delivering this part of the feedback to the candidates to interview at, they'll say the Harry Potter books, right, or Twilight, right? These are kind of known entities to them and in fact have sold a lot of books. Fun fact, when I was at Kindle at Amazon for the first, 6 or 8 months, it seemed to me the only books that we sold for the Kindle were the Hunger Games books, all four or three of those, and the box set. But the box set was sold as a digital box set. So, and the Harry Potter books. That was, I guess, the only books. Oh no, not Harry Potter. That came later. It was the Hunger Games and 50 Shades of Grey. That's all we sold. Like every day we'd look at our top books sold, and it just seemed like those are the only books people were buying. But anyways, turns out the most popular books ever sold, unsurprisingly, is the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, religious texts, basically, right? They sell, that's what they are. But remove the sales numbers and just look at what those books are. They're the stories of who we are and what we value and our cultures. Stories are how our brains have evolved. We listen to stories. And stories are told in a very specific way with a very specific cadence. Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have the normal, something happened, and now a new normal, right? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, is even how sitcoms work, right? In the United States, anyways. You got 22-minute shows. You got 8 minutes of commercials and the bumper intro music and outro credits, right? But you basically have 3 acts, right? You have an act, then you have the commercial break, then you have second act, commercial break, third act. That's how it goes. Movies generally are talked about, at least United States-based movies are talked about in 3 acts, right? You have the kind of the 3 acts of the film. Plays, it's this way. This is how we communicate: a beginning, a middle, an end, a normal, something happened, a new normal. The stories that you tell in your interview should follow this format. Hard stop. Now, the Amazon structure, I get a lot of people who come through interview at because they want to go interview at Amazon, and I used to run the Kindle team. Fine, makes sense. But this works no matter where you're interviewing. The STAR format that Amazon utilizes, and this is how they teach their people how to interview people. But if you deliver your answers using the STAR format, you will do very, very good. Why? Very, very well. Why? Because it has a beginning, a middle, and end. Situation, task, action, result. Now, situation, task, whenever I used to think about this stuff before I got to Amazon, for me it was problem, action, result, PAR, but it sounds dumb. I guess the STAR is better. But situation and task, that's the beginning, right? That's your normal. Here's what was going on. Here's what we wanted to do. Here's what we thought about. Here's what our challenges. That's your act one. Then all hell broke loose. We had to go make a decision. We had to deploy code, or something exploded, or we had a product recall, or customers revolted, whatever. We had to go take an action. That's act two. And then you've got the results. Okay? Situation, task, action, result. Act one, act two, act three. Beginning, middle, end. Normal, something happened, new normal. This structure will save you so much time in terms of how you're presenting your answer, because you can prepare your stories now. So it's important to storytelling, linking back to when people say prepare your stories, preparing your stories for your interviews, because now you can think about it as, I'm just going to tell a story. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. Great. I understand that. And you can tell these stories over and over again. And in fact, you should practice your stories, whether you're talking into a mirror or telling them at parties, which, if you're talking about work at parties, maybe you're a Microsoft employee. It's a bad Microsoft joke, but that's like a Microsoft circa 2000s joke. You can practice these and kind of tell them again and again and just comfortable telling them, as opposed to being that weirdo who sits in the bathroom and tries to practice answers to interview questions that you may or may not get answered, or may or may not get asked, right? So when you think about how you're prepping for your interviews, this is a far more efficient way of doing it, because you're preparing stories, and those stories have a beginning, middle, end. You get comfortable telling the stories. You can get interrupted. Any of those things, fine, but you understand you have structure, and this is the most important part. Well, most important part I'll share for another video, but this is the most important part, which is, think about a cartoon in the newspaper. It's got 3 panels, beginning, middle, end, right? Same thing, storytelling, right? If you do all your talking in the first panel, the balloon with the words gets so big that the characters get pushed out. They get pushed out of the video, or out of the panel. So when you get to the end of Act 1, stop talking. It's really hard to do. I get it. It's really hard to do because you're nervous and you just want to keep it. Stop talking. And do this one thing. Just this one thing. So that was pretty much the situation of what was going on. I could talk about what we actually did, or I can give more detail if you want. That's one version of it. There are umpteen million, technical term, umpteen million ways of asking a similar question, which serves as a bridge from Act 1 to Act 2. Why are you doing this? Because you are giving a freebie to your interviewer. You are pausing, so the word balloon deflates. You're allowing the interviewer to re-engage, right? Because the more you talk, the more you're pushing them back, and they fall asleep, right? So the word balloon deflates. They lean forward. They're more engaged. You've asked them a question now. So now they're thinking about you. I'm going to answer the question. And they're going to tell you what altitude they want you to fly at. So it's a cheap trick for you, because you get more details about kind of, are you flying at the right altitude or not? And it gives you a bridge from each of your sections. Now, you don't want to be repetitive in this, and you got to be clever about how you do it. So think about all your various different bridges for how you get from the beginning to the middle to the end. But stop talking. A 10-minute answer is just fine as a 3-minute, 4-minute. It's just fine. Having that pause allows the room to reset, allows you to reset, take a breath, drink some water, allows your interviewer to re-engage. It does a whole number of good things for you, but it also is allowing you to hook the interviewer. Bring them along in the story. They understand stories. They want to hear the end of it. They're going to want to know how it turned out. Great. You're leading them there. Get them to the answer. Take your time, but do it in story fashion. Don't start with the end and then work your way backward. You don't want to do that here.